780 grams of rotten rice per day. That's all an American soldier received for 12 hours of slave labor at a Japanese shipyard. Every night, screams. Men screaming from the pain in their bones. Beriberi was devouring them from the inside. Dysentery was tearing their guts apart. 1.5 corpses per day. That was the death rate at Fukuoka camp. And then the guards discovered his surname. Fujita. A Japanese name. "You betrayed your people," said the commander. They beat his spine with a wooden bat, again and again, until his bones cracked, until the pain reached such intensity that his consciousness began to fade. But Sergeant Frank Fujita did not fall. He clenched his teeth. He did not make a sound. He remained standing. 3.5 years of hell. 1,260 days of starvation, torture, and humiliation. And every single day he repeated one thing to himself: I am American. Japanese blood flowed through his veins. A Japanese surname stood in his documents, but his heart beat only for America. He kept a secret diary, hid the pages inside the barracks walls, drew scenes of torture, documented every crime. He knew, if they found it, they would execute him on the spot. But he kept writing, because the world had to know. Because he was an American soldier until his very last breath. This is what it means. The strength of spirit is stronger than pain. This is what it means. Love for your country is stronger than the fear of death. Want to know what happened to Fujita's diary? How was it used in the trial of war criminals? Subscribe. In the next videos, I'll reveal details that weren't included in this video. Like and subscribe so you don't lose the channel. October 20, 1921. Lawton, Oklahoma. The autumn wind sweeps across the Oklahoma plains as Ida Pearl Elliott Fujita holds her newborn son for the first time. Outside the small house where Tsuniji Fujita works as a cook, the leaves scatter like fragments of two worlds colliding. The baby's eyes are closed, but already his face carries the marks of both Japan and America. Features that will one day make him a target in ways his parents cannot yet imagine. Tsuneji, who now calls himself Frank, looks at his second child with pride swelling in his chest. He came to America in 1914 from a tiny village near Nagasaki, Japan, hoping to learn agricultural methods. Instead, he found love with a white waitress in Rock Island, Illinois, and married her in 1919, despite laws that made it impossible for him to ever become a citizen. He has already made a decision about his children that will echo through history. They will be 100% American. The baby's name will be Frank Jr. One day, his friends will call him Fu. And one day, the blood of both nations running through his veins will nearly cost him his life. The small house in Lawton is warm despite the October chill. Ida Pearl whispers to her newborn, unaware that 20 years from this moment, her son will be starving in a Japanese prison camp, his spine shattered by the blows of guards who see him as a traitor to his father's homeland. The horror begins here, in this quiet moment of birth. November 10, 1941, 2200. Camp Bowie, Texas. The train whistle pierces the night as Sergeant Frank Fujita boards the first of two trains carrying the 2nd Battalion, 131st Field Artillery Regiment toward San Francisco. He is 20 years old, and in his pocket he carries a small notebook, the first of many that will document horrors beyond imagination. The nickname Fu came from a cartoon cat he drew as a teenager in Abilene. His sketches attracted the attention of the Abilene Reporter News in 1937, and his artistic talent earned him a position as staff cartoonist for his high school newspaper. Now those same hands that drew whimsical cats will soon sketch scenes of torture, starvation, and death. It was sure hard to say goodbye to Charlie, Ed, Joe, and the rest, Fu writes in his diary that night. We got underway at 10 p.m. He does not know that he is saying goodbye to America for the last time as the man he once was. The train rumbles westward through the Texas night. Fu looks out the window at the darkness, thinking of his friend Roy McCullough, whose stories of adventure in the National Guard had inspired him to enlist at 17. The recruiting officer had initially refused him, questioned his citizenship because of his Japanese surname, doubted his height and weight, challenged his age. It took the local civics teacher to confirm that Frank Fujita Jr. was indeed a natural-born American citizen. But what does citizenship mean when your face betrays you? What does it mean when your blood is divided between two nations at war?
The train carries 558 men of the 2nd Battalion toward an unknown destination called Plum. They believe they are headed to the Philippines. They are wrong. They are headed to Java, to capture, to torture, to a fate so terrible that for nearly 3 years, the United States government will not know if any of them are alive. They are headed to become the Lost Battalion. November 21, 1941, San Francisco, California. The USS Republic sits heavy in the water at Fort Mason, loaded with the men and equipment of the 2nd Battalion. Fu stands on the deck, feeling the salt air on his face for the first time. He is a machine gun sergeant in E Battery now, having transferred specifically so he could go overseas. No one was going anywhere without him, he had decided. The ship's anti-aircraft guns gleam dully in the November sun. In the coming weeks, Fu will learn to operate them, but no amount of training will prepare him for what awaits. As the Republic pulls away from the American coast, Fu takes out his notebook and begins to draw. The golden hills of California recede into the distance. He does not know that it will be 4 years before he sees them again. And when he does, he will be a skeleton of the man he once was. His back permanently damaged. His mind scarred by memories that will haunt him until his death in 1996. The Pacific Ocean stretches before them, blue and endless. Somewhere beneath those waters, Japanese submarines wait. December 7, 1941. Aboard USS Republic, Pacific Ocean. The loudspeakers crackle to life with a sound that will change history. Japan had just bombed Pearl Harbor, Fu writes later. Pandemonium broke out aboard the ship. The men crowd around the speakers, their faces pale with shock. They had left Hawaii just 8 days ago, had walked those same streets that are now covered in blood and burning oil. The USS Arizona, the USS Oklahoma, the USS California. All the ships they had seen in the harbor now lie broken and burning. It was almost unbelievable that such a thing could happen, Fu records. The shock was compounded by the knowledge that we had just left there a mere 8 days before. And here we were out in the middle of the ocean, not too far away. And most of our fleet had been sunk in the raid at Pearl. But for Fu, the horror runs deeper than for any other man aboard. During the daily information programs a few days later, the announcer asks over the ship's speakers, "Is there a Jap on board this ship?" The word hangs in the air like poison gas. Fu feels every eye on the ship turned toward him. His heart hammers against his ribs. He is half Japanese. His father was born near Nagasaki. His surname, Fujita, is unmistakably Japanese. In that moment, Fu makes a decision that will define his courage for the rest of his life. He writes a reply for the announcer to read. "I do not know if there is a Jap on board or not, but there is an American Army sergeant who happens to be half Japanese. I know, for I am that person. Sergeant Frank Fujita." The words are broadcast to the entire ship. Fu holds his breath, waiting for the backlash, the suspicion, the hatred. But the other soldiers, his Texas brothers, remain silent. They know Fu. They know his loyalty. They trust him. Still, Fu writes that he remained apprehensive for a while. He has no idea that this moment of courage is merely practice for the trials to come. January 11, 1942, Surabaya, Java, Dutch East Indies. The Dutch liner Bloemfontein docks at the port of Surabaya, and Fu steps onto the soil of Java for the first time. The heat is oppressive, the air thick with humidity and the scent of tropical flowers. Monkeys chatter in the trees. The island seems peaceful, almost idyllic, but the peace is an illusion. The 2nd Battalion has been diverted from the Philippines after Pearl Harbor. They are the only American ground combat unit to reach the Dutch East Indies, sent to provide support for the 19th Heavy Bombardment Group. The B-17 bombers need ground crews, and the Texans are chosen for the task. Fu and his fellow soldiers are stationed at Singosari, an army camp with an airfield. For the next few weeks, Fu fills his diary with accounts of drinking with British, Dutch, and Australian soldiers in local bars. He notes with pride that being from Texas, he can drink the British soldiers under the table. He writes about the exotic wildlife that makes its way into his tent, the strange foods, the beautiful Javanese women. But beneath the surface calm, war is approaching with unstoppable momentum. On February 3, 1942, Fu experiences his first Japanese bombing raid. This was our first raid, and we were fascinated by the ghostly formation of planes, he writes. Their white undersides made them hard to see distinctly, and they looked like ghosts. We watched as they opened their bomb bays and saw the bombs leave the planes in long strings. It all seemed fairy-like and unreal. The whole scene did not seem threatening. War and bombing raids were something that we had read about, that happened to other people in other times and places, and had nothing to do with us. The bombs fall. The ground shakes. The fairy tale ends. War has arrived in Java, and it will consume everything. March 7, 1942, near Soerabaja, Java. Fu is drinking a cold beer when a sergeant bursts in with news. American reinforcements have arrived. His heart leaps. For weeks they have been fighting a losing battle against the Japanese invasion. The Dutch are outnumbered, the Australians overwhelmed. American reinforcements could change everything. Fu eagerly jumps up to greet his fellow countrymen, but when he sees the soldiers, his blood runs cold. They are not American. They are Japanese troops. The sergeant was mistaken, or perhaps made a grim joke. Fu grabs a rifle. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst, he writes. I was hyperventilating, and I fired off 2 more wild shots without hitting anything. I thought to myself if I didn't pull myself together, I would be a goner. He takes aim again. His hands steady, his breath slows. He is a Texan. He is an American. And these men are the enemy. He fires. A Japanese soldier falls dead. A Dutch officer approaches him, his face curious. He points at the dead soldier, then at Fu's face. What would you do if you looked down your rifle and saw one of your own? He asks. The question cuts deep. Fu knows what the officer is implying. He shares blood with the enemy. His face resembles theirs. His father came from their homeland. But Fu's answer is immediate and unwavering. He had better shoot before I did. At Porong, near Surabaya, E Battery supports the Dutch 8th and 13th Infantry Battalions in fierce resistance. The Texans fight with everything they have, their 75mm guns blazing against the Japanese advance. But it is not enough. March 8, 1942, 900, Java. Lieutenant General Heinter Porten, Commander-in-Chief of the Allied forces in Java, announces the surrender. That evening, at 2300, the Dutch radio station Nairam broadcasts its final message from a temporary transmitter. The announcer, Bert Garthoff, speaks the words that seal the fate of 558 American soldiers. They sluiten nu. Vaarwel tot betere tijden. Leve de koningin. We are closing now. Farewell till better times. Long live the Queen. Fu and 550 other members of his battalion are now prisoners of war. The Lost Battalion is born. March 12, 1942, Yarmarkt, Java. The Japanese guards herd the prisoners into a fairground that has been converted into a prison camp. The carnival rides stand silent and rusting. The cotton candy stands are empty. The Ferris wheel looms against the sky like a skeleton. Once herded into barracks, Fu's fellow soldiers gather around him with fear in their eyes. "Change your name," they urge. "Change it to something Spanish or Filipino, anything but Fujita. They'll shoot you when they find out you're Japanese." Fu feels the terror grip his heart. He has the same thoughts. His surname is a death sentence. Japanese guards will see him as a traitor to Japan, a disgrace to the blood of the rising sun. "I was really in anguish," Fu writes, "for I thought the same thing. And the temptation to change my name was almost overwhelming." He lies awake at night, his mind racing. If he changes his name and dies, his parents will never know what happened to him. His death would be reported under a false name, and Frank and Ida Pearl Fujita would spend the rest of their lives wondering what became of their son. But if he keeps his name, he will surely be executed. It is an impossible choice. In the darkness of the barracks, surrounded by the snoring of exhausted men and the distant sounds of Japanese guards, Fu makes his decision. He will keep his name. He will remain Frank Fujita, Sergeant, United States Army. He will be an American until his last breath. "I felt that if I changed my name and I should die for any reason during the war then, if my death were reported at all, it would be reported under my assumed name, and my parents would never know what happened to me," he writes. He also acknowledges the cost. "I felt my longevity would certainly be brief, under the circumstances, with a name like Fujita." But the suspicion comes from an unexpected quarter. The Dutch POWs learn that Fu is half Japanese, and immediately assume he is a Japanese plant, a spy sent to infiltrate their ranks and report back to the guards. Fu is trapped between two worlds. The Americans fear the Japanese will kill him for being American. The Dutch fear he is Japanese. He belongs to both nations and to neither. He is alone in his terror. April 29, 1942, Yarmarkt prison camp. It is the Emperor's birthday, and the Japanese guards allow a rare visitor's day. Local Dutch women attempt to deliver supplies through the prison gates, but many are beaten severely for their efforts. Most prisoners request uniforms to replace their tattered rags, but Fu has a different request. He asks for art supplies. The guards confiscate the uniforms, but, inexplicably, allow Fu to keep the drawing paper, pen, and ink delivered by members of the Salvation Army. Fu does not know it yet, but he has just been given weapons more powerful than any gun. With these supplies, he will document every horror he witnesses. He will draw the beatings, the starvation, the torture. He will create a secret record that will one day be used as evidence in war crimes trials. His diary will become his resistance. His art will become his defiance. And his words will ensure that the world never forgets. October 1942, Changi Prison Camp, Singapore. The Hell Ship delivers Fu and hundreds of other prisoners to Singapore, where they are interned at the Changi military base. The conditions are beyond description. The Japanese have employed captured British soldiers as guards, a fact that fills Fu and his fellow Americans with rage. These men gleefully serve the enemy, handing out portions of maggot-infested rice to their fellow Allied soldiers, when they serve them food at all. Fu develops a severe case of dysentery. The disease ravages his intestines, causing violent diarrhea that leaves him weak and dehydrated. He is allowed a hospital stay, but the hospital is merely a room filled with dying men. When he is discharged, he is forced back into the same deplorable conditions that made him sick in the first place. The food rations are cut to starvation levels. The men, their bodies consuming themselves, search desperately for any extra morsels to fill their screaming stomachs. They eat jungle snails. They scavenge seeds to roast. They eat things that should never pass human lips. And still, they starve. Fu keeps writing in his diary, hiding the pages in his clothing, documenting every detail of the horror. His handwriting grows smaller as paper becomes more precious than food. He writes in code sometimes, developing an encrypted script for the most sensitive information.
Information that could get him killed if discovered. The diary grows thicker. The men grow thinner. Late November 1942. Aboard a hell ship. Destination unknown. Fu and 1,000 other prisoners are crammed into the hold of a Japanese cargo ship. The conditions are beyond nightmarish. Men are packed so tightly they cannot sit. The heat is suffocating. The stench of sweat, vomit, and human waste fills the air with an almost solid presence. Men die during the voyage. Their bodies remain among the living until the ship docks. No one knows where they are going. The ship travels for days through submarine-infested waters. At any moment, an Allied torpedo could sink them all. The Japanese have not marked the ship as carrying POWs. They are headed to Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2. They are headed to the island of Koyagi, off the coast of Nagasaki. They are headed to hell. December 1942. Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2, Nagasaki Prefecture. The camp sits on Koyagi Island, connected to the Kawanami Brothers shipyard by a tunnel. The shipyard employs about 60,000 workers, including 1,500 Allied prisoners of war. At its peak, the camp holds 1,500 prisoners, 550 British, with some Australians, 500 Dutch, and 100 Americans. They are all slave laborers now, working in violation of international treaties that Japan has agreed to respect. The Japanese split the prisoners into work crews. Fu is assigned to the dockyards, where he will spend his days constructing ships for the Imperial Japanese Navy. The irony is not lost on him. He is building the very vessels that will be used to attack his countrymen. The work at the dockyards was so hard, the weather so cold, and the food rations so inadequate, it was surprising we were able to withstand the demands made upon us, Fu writes. We would return to camp in the evening bone-weary and barely able to walk. The effects were accumulative, and as time went on, we became weaker and even more susceptible to the ravages of disease and malnutrition. The death rate is staggering. During the first winter at Fukuoka No. 2, prisoners die at a rate of 1.5 per day, with some days seeing as many as 3 deaths. The principal causes are pneumonia, dysentery, beriberi, and infections. Medical facilities are primitive. 1 English and 3 Dutch doctors struggle to care for the sick with almost no medicines. If medicines had been available, the death rate would be far lower. But the Japanese provide almost nothing. Food rations are calculated with brutal precision. Prisoners performing hard labor, 780 grams of rice per day. Light workers and convalescents, 530 grams of rice per day. Officers not performing physical labor, 350 grams of rice per day. The rice is often sour. Sometimes bread is served at the noon meal, but it too is usually sour. The prisoners eat it anyway, their bodies screaming for any sustenance. For a while, bread was served at the noon meal, but usually it was sour, camp records note. However, goaded by hunger, it was eaten by the prisoners. Those who work at the shipyard are able to obtain additional items of food occasionally through theft or trade, but these opportunities are dangerous. The punishment for stealing food is severe beating or worse. Every night, the prisoners perform what they call the grayback ritual. Every cell of our bodies was crying out for rest, but this was not to be had, Fu writes. All through the night, men would scream out from the effects of dry beriberi. The men remove all of their clothing and meticulously search every seam and wrinkle for the big, grayback lice that nest in their garments. The lice carry disease. They must be removed. But they always return. The latrine visits are regulated with military precision. Trips outside of the allotted time result in savage beatings from the guards. For men suffering from dysentery and diarrhea, this regulation is torture itself. The camp commander issues orders that are read to the prisoners through an interpreter. POW number 341 is no good at picking up iron. The sergeant major really expects you not to happen. You may bathe when the water is fired. Salute from the heart. Use water sparingly. Try not to have fire. Unnecessary things are going on at the docks. There will be heavy, heavy punishment. All buying and selling is forbidden. New Year tomorrow, so nothing filthy. Live happily in the camp. The galley honcho feels very bad because people try to improve upon his cooking. Our camp is the talk of the town of Nagasaki on the food proposition. Don't let it happen from any viewpoint. Camp authorities want everybody to be happy. Everybody to be happy. Fu keeps writing. He keeps drawing. His diary grows with pages filled with dates, names, incidents of brutality. He documents everything. He hides his notebooks in the walls of the barracks. If the guards find them, he will be executed. But he cannot stop. The world must know. June 1943, Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2. The moment Fu has dreaded for over a year finally arrives. A Japanese guard is reading the work crew roster when he comes across the name Fujita. His eyes narrow. He looks up at the assembled prisoners, scanning their faces. Fujita, he says again, his voice sharp. Fu feels his blood turn to ice. The guard begins walking down the line of prisoners, looking at each face. He is searching for a Japanese man. Fu's heart hammers so hard he fears the guard will hear it. His breath comes in short, shallow gasps. This is the moment. This is when they will discover his heritage. This is when they will execute him as a traitor to Japan. The guard stops in front of him. You, he says. Fu is taken to the camp commander's office. The commander sits behind his desk, his uniform immaculate, his expression unreadable. He studies Fu with cold eyes. Fujita is a Japanese name, is it not? The commander asks. Fu's throat is dry. He manages to speak. It is. Then you are Japanese? I am an American citizen. The commander's eyes narrow. Your name and blood are Japanese. I have other blood than Japanese, Fu replies, his voice steady despite his terror. And I am a native-born American. The interrogation continues. Each of Fu's answers is pro-American, defiant, unwavering in his loyalty to the United States. With each response, the commander's anger grows. Finally, the commander makes his decision. As punishment for Fu's insolence, he will be forced to learn to read and speak Japanese. He will be re-educated in the Japanese ways. The commander believes that Fu's Japanese blood can be awakened, that his loyalty to America can be broken. Fu is assigned to a Japanese corporal for his lessons. The corporal is not a patient teacher. Day after day, Fu sits in a small room with the corporal, attempting to learn Japanese characters. He deliberately fails at his studies, making himself appear stupid and unteachable. His handwriting is terrible. His pronunciation is worse. The corporal's frustration mounts with each passing day. One afternoon, the corporal snaps. Without warning, he draws his sword and makes a violent pass at Fu's neck. Fu feels the wind of the blade as it whistles past his throat. He jumps backward, narrowly avoiding being decapitated. The corporal's eyes are wild with rage. For a moment, Fu is certain the next swing will not miss. But the corporal regains control. He sheathes his sword. The lesson continues. Fu's hands shake for hours afterward. He continues to fail at his Japanese lessons. For reasons that are never explained to him, the camp commander eventually releases Fu from his language studies and allows him to return to his former duties in the dockyard. But the horror is not over. August 6, 1943. Fukuoka POW Camp No. 2. Fu is not working fast enough. He is moving large staging planks for ship construction, his weakened body struggling under the weight. His muscles scream with exhaustion. His vision blurs with hunger. His back, already weakened by months of malnutrition and overwork, threatens to give out. Two guards approach him. They know who he is. They know he is the Japanese American. They know he is the traitor. The first guard strikes him in the face. Fu staggers, but does not fall. The second guard kicks him in the chest. Pain explodes through his ribcage. He doubles over, but remains on his feet. They take turns. Fists slam into his face. Boots connect with his chest. His ears ring. His vision swims. Then one guard picks up a large bat. The first blow connects with Fu's spine. I did not know that pain could attain such a high degree of intensity, Fu writes later. My entire head seemed to explode. My senses spun around and seemed to pulsate in and out, bordering on unconsciousness. The bat strikes again, and again, and again. I thought that I could not possibly take another blow. I kept telling myself, do not make a sound. Whatever happens, do not fall to the ground. Do not let them know that they have broken your spirit. Fu remains standing. He makes no sound. The guards continue to beat him. When they finally stop, Fu's back is shattered. The damage will be permanent. For the rest of his life, he will suffer from debilitating back pain. The injuries will haunt him until his death in 1996. But he did not fall. He did not cry out. He did not let them break him. That night, Fu writes in his diary by candlelight, his hands trembling, his back screaming with every movement. He documents the beating in detail. Names, dates, the number of blows, the type of weapon. One day, this testimony will be used in war crimes trials. One day, there will be justice. But first, there is more suffering to endure. October 1943. Transfer to Omori Prison Island. Fu is moved from Fukuoka to Omori Prison Island in Tokyo Bay. The camp sits on a man-made island, constructed by the prisoners themselves through back-breaking labor. At its peak, Omori holds approximately 600 prisoners. The island is connected to the mainland by a causeway. The barracks are crude wooden structures that offer little protection from the elements. Here, Fu will spend his last 2 years of captivity. And here, the Japanese will make one final attempt to use him for their propaganda war. Charles Cousins, an Australian Army major who had been a successful radio announcer before the war, has been forced by the Japanese to produce propaganda broadcasts. He works at Radio Tokyo, creating shows designed to demoralize Allied troops. The Japanese see potential in Fu. A Japanese-American POW speaking against America would be a powerful propaganda tool. His ethnicity makes him especially valuable. They approach him with their proposal. Fu is to write scripts for radio broadcasts. He cannot refuse outright. That would mean death. But he can resist in other ways. I was already writing such juvenile stuff that it was completely unusable, Fu records. He deliberately makes his scripts ridiculous, filled with errors and obvious propaganda that no one could take seriously. When forced to speak on the radio, he mumbles, mispronounces words, makes himself sound unintelligent and unprofessional. I had misgivings and problems with our conscience about writing anything for an enemy nation, he writes. Unlike John David Provu, another lost battalion POW who donned his Shinto robes and greeted the Japanese landing force and offered his services when captured, Fu remains loyal to America. The Japanese eventually give up on him. He is too stubborn, too American. They send him back to regular labor duties. Fu has won another small victory. But the war drags on, and the conditions worsen. 1944 to 1945. Omori Prison Island. For the families of the lost battalion, their sons, husbands, and brothers have simply vanished. For nearly 3 years, the United States government has no information about the fate of the 558 men captured on Java. They are presumed dead. In February 1943, a transcription of a Tokyo shortwave radio broadcast reveals that some of the lost battalion are alive and being held as prisoners. But the information is sketchy. Incomplete. At home, parents weep over photographs of sons they believe they will never see again. At Omori, the prisoners watch the night skies glow from fires in Yokohama and Tokyo. B-29 bombers are raining destruction on Japan. The Americans are close. The guards become more nervous, more brutal. Rumors spread through the camp. When the Americans get too close, the Japanese will gather all the prisoners together and gun them down. The prisoners have heard stories of such massacres. On some Japanese-held islands, POWs have been executed en masse as Allied forces approached. Fu and his fellow prisoners make peace with death, but still, they hope. Fu continues to write in his diary. At Omori, he manages to compile all his miscellaneous writing scraps, the pages he has kept sewn into his clothing and gear throughout his captivity, into one ledger book. He hides it in a wall of one of the camp buildings. Only once is he caught with one of his notebooks. A guard is searching for knives and discovers the small diary. Fu's heart stops. But the guard is looking for weapons, not words. He overlooks the diary. Fu lives another day. August 1945. The end approaches. The prisoners at Omori see the increasing intensity of air raids. Planes shuttle through angry puffs of anti-aircraft fire to pummel nearby airfields, port facilities, and storehouses. The Americans are very, very close. Then, on August 6, 1945, something happens that changes history. Approximately 170 miles southwest of Omori, in the city of Hiroshima, the first atomic bomb used in warfare detonates at 08:15 local time. 3 days later, on August 9th, another atomic bomb falls on Nagasaki, the same city where Fu had labored as a slave in the Kawanami shipyards. The POWs at Fukuoka No. 2 witnessed the blast from their camp. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announces Japan's surrender. At Omori, everything changes suddenly and dramatically. Work details cease immediately. Many of the guards abandon their posts. Those who remain begin passing out clothes, vitamins, toilet paper, and more food than the prisoners have seen in years. The starving men can barely comprehend what is happening. August 29, 1945, 1400, Omori Prison Island. Commander Harold Stassen, on Admiral William Halsey's staff, positions hospital and transport ships in Tokyo Bay. At mid-afternoon, he directs a flotilla of Navy launches toward the man-made island. The first 3 boats hold battle-hardened Marines who immediately secure the perimeter. Aboard one of the boats is Navy photographer John Swope. As the landing craft approach the camp, they see the pier jutting out into the bay. Pandemonium erupts. "We finally spotted the moving figures on a pier jutting out to the bay," Swope writes later. "We came closer. They were screaming and yelling and waving their arms, their shirts, and an American flag." The American flag. The prisoners have secretly made it on a stolen Japanese sheet using coloring supplies from Red Cross packages. They knew they faced execution if the Japanese discovered the flag. They had been threatened with court-martial by superiors, who feared all prisoners would be punished if the flag was found. But they made it anyway. And now they wave it proudly as their countrymen approach. Some wore no clothing at all, Swope records. Some had G-strings, and others had on the remnants of what they were captured in. And a few had on new clothes that had been dropped by B-29s the last few days. The boats reached the pier. "We rounded a turn in the channel and were immediately besieged by 100 clasping hands and arms," Swope writes. "They continued to cheer and yell and shake our hands and clap us on the back and fall on us in tear-soaked embraces." Among the 550 POWs at Omori being liberated is Sergeant Frank Fujita. He has survived 3.5 years of imprisonment. He has survived beatings, starvation, disease. He has survived being a Japanese American held by the Japanese. He has survived. In his own words, These are the first free Americans that I have seen in almost 4 years. I am so grateful not to have drowned for my own foolishness that I cannot even cry. They are indeed the toughest men I have ever seen.
I am fully aware that I have not drowned. My final foolishness has not killed me. I am alive. I am free. The reporters from Time and Life magazines notice him immediately. Among all the prisoners, the famous aviator Louis Zamperini, the commanders of the USS Grenadier and USS Tang, Marine Corps ace Gregory Pappy Boyington, it is Fu who captures their attention. A Japanese-American who fought against Japan. A man who kept his name despite the danger. A man whose loyalty never wavered. They clamor to get his story. Fu is transported to Yokohama on the USS Monitor, then to Atsugi Airfield in Kanagawa, Japan. The nightmare is over, but the scars, both visible and invisible, will remain forever. September 4, 1945, Atsugi Airfield, Kanagawa, Japan. As Fu waits to be processed for his return to America, officials ask him a question that makes his blood run cold. Did you keep a diary? Fu hesitates. He has kept a diary, a detailed record of every horror, every beating, every death. It is hidden in a wall at Omori. If he admits to its existence, he will be embroiled in war crimes trials. His testimony will be required. His memories will be raked over again and again. He is tired. So tired. He denies that the diary exists. It is the only lie he tells. October 1945, Abilene, Texas. After an eternity of sailing, Fu re-enters the United States through Tacoma, Washington. He travels by train to Texas, then by bus to Abilene. He weighs far less than when he left. His back is damaged beyond repair. His mind carries memories that will give him nightmares for the rest of his life. He arrives at the bus station in Abilene. His mother and baby sister are there to meet him. He walks right past them without recognizing them. My mom must have been drowsy, he writes later, or the sight of me froze her to immobility, for I was 2 or 3 people past her before she came into action. He does not recognize his own mother. He does not recognize his own sister. The war has changed him that much. 1948, Federal Court, San Francisco. Fu has spent the post-war years struggling with a number of disillusionments with civilian life. His back pain is debilitating. The memories haunt him. In 1948, he re-enlists in the reserves, thinking that if he is going to fall apart, he might as well do it in the army. He is boarding a ship for the Pacific when someone hands him a subpoena. He is ordered to appear as a witness on behalf of Iva Toguri D'Aquino, the woman the world knows as Tokyo Rose. The trial is one of the longest and costliest in American history at that time. Toguri has been charged with treason for her radio broadcasts during the war. The prosecution claims she deliberately demoralized American troops through her propaganda. Fu testifies about the Japanese attempts to use him for propaganda broadcasts. His testimony supports the contention that POWs were forced to participate in propaganda activities against their will. But Toguri is convicted on 1 count of treason and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Years later, it will be revealed that key witnesses were coerced into false testimony. Toguri will receive a presidential pardon from Gerald Ford in 1977. December 12, 1950. War Department, Washington, D.C. Fu finally writes to the War Department asking about his diary. "Did you find it?" he asks. "Can I have it returned?" On December 21, 1950, he receives his diary along with a letter from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI informs him that the Bureau had held on to his diary because it was useful evidence in the prosecution of traitors held as POWs in the Pacific
and in war crimes trials. His words, written in secret, hidden in walls, kept at the risk of his life, have been used to bring justice to those who committed atrocities. The diary has served its purpose. Now Fu can use it for his own purpose, to ensure the world never forgets. 1993, University of North Texas Press. Frank Fujita publishes his memoir, Fu, a Japanese-American prisoner of the rising sun. The book is based on his secret diary and includes the illustrations he drew while in captivity. It is edited by Stanley L. Falk, former chief historian of the U.S. Air Force, and introduced by Robert Ware. The Southwestern Historical Quarterly calls it unique in that it chronicles the internment of the only Japanese-American combat soldier captured during the Pacific Campaign of World War II. The Journal of Military History praises it as an excellent first-person account, one which will add greatly to the existing literature. Fujita's experiences make for compelling oral history and deserve to be told. Publishers Weekly notes, readers will be impressed with Fujita's ebullience and humor that persisted despite the prolonged ordeal he underwent. The New York Public Library chooses it as one of their books to remember. Fu appears on C-SPAN, filmed at the Admiral Nimitz Museum. He is interviewed by Ted Koppel on Nightline as part of the debate concerning the dropping of the atomic bomb. He is interviewed on the History Channel. His story, once hidden in the walls of a prison camp, is now told to the world. I am comfortable knowing that I have paid my dues to be called an American, Fu writes in his conclusion, and I stand ready to defend my America if that ever again becomes necessary. December 11, 1996. United States of America. Frank Fujita dies at the age of 75. His body finally rests, freed from the pain that plagued him since that August day in 1943, when Japanese guards shattered his spine with a bat. But his story lives on. In Jacksboro, Texas, a historical marker commemorates the Lost Battalion. In libraries and archives across America, his diary and drawings preserve the memory of horrors that must never be repeated. And in the hearts of those who read his words, his courage endures. He was a man born of two nations at war. He chose to be American. And he paid for that choice with 3.5 years of unimaginable suffering. But he never broke. He never betrayed his country. He kept his name, he kept his diary, and he kept his honor. Frank Fujita. Cartoonist, soldier, prisoner, survivor. American. This is his story. It is a true story. It is a horror story. And it happened. Sources and documentation. This account is based entirely on documented historical sources, including